I'm doing fine, and you? I really enjoyed your talk. One thing that occurred to me while you were speaking was, are there any differences in the way that Gandhi practiced ahimsa and Sanatana Dharma, in which Ram, when he left Ayodhya, left everything but not his bow and arrow for defense, and he still waged a war for the truth.
I think these are some of the, I knew the questions are going to be way beyond my means of reflecting on the mythology versus the practical reality. But with, just to comment on Gandhi's ahimsa, I think his ahimsa was more reflected on non-violence, to say, because the Britishers and colonized power in those days were so powerful and so hurting the Indians, the only way to actually resist them was by giving them a complete non-violence resistance movement, and that's where he actually took it from. I don't think he reflected onto religious connotation, but what he meant was that peace can only be achieved not through violence, not through the reactions and counterattack. Peace can only come through non-ahimsa or ahimsa ways and with non-violence. So I think that's, but many of people here are far more educated to reflect on Ramayana and Ramayana. Go ahead, please. This is going to be a conversation, not just me answering.
My view would be on this, that Ramchandji went to the Vanvas. So he went to jungles, and he's there, he may have to negotiate the wild animals and all those wild things. Probably that was the reason why he carried the bow and arrow to safeguard. But the whole Gandhian concept is basically in a human context.
Yeah.
When people are interacting each other, the social norms and then how socially we should behave ourselves, and that is, so there is no direct comparison between Ramchandji going to jungles and taking bow and arrow and the Gandhi's philosophy.
Yeah.
That's my take.
There are many here who would have some different reflection. I think we are open for conversation. So, any opinions are good. Okay. Oh, you're
looking for another question.
This is not a question, but I have a biography of Mahatma Gandhi, and one chapter talks about his letters to Hitler.
yes.
And that's the first. It was a big surprise to me that he was in touch with Hitler, and the reason being that as a child, we had pictures of all the independence people, Mahatma Gandhi, and all that. And I grew up in the state of Jaipur, in the city of Jaipur. My father was involved in the independence movement. He was jailed in 1942 for Bharat Choro Andolan. He wore khadi all his life. And my eldest brother, he wore khadi even after all his life. So, do you have any comment about Hitler and Gandhi? It's a big surprise to me.
No, I think Gandhi had a very, and again, this is my early readings, this is what I was reflecting on the Manipur. Gandhi was quite inquisitive. He wanted to understand the world. He actually before he went to South Africa, he had never even heard of apartheid. He had never experienced that being heard. So when he went to apartheid, that's where he began to understand the whole discrimination part of it. He didn't even feel that the discrimination was happening in India. He strongly believed in the caste system at that time.
Yeah.
It was evolution for him when he was in Africa. That what the discrimination looks like when you are the minority and somebody else is subjugating you to all kinds of atrocities. And that's where he started to awaken his own consciousness to say, I'm going to do this. So when he was communicating with many world leaders during that time. And from a colonial power point of view, we were thrust into the World War I and II because we were under colonial control. And he had to understand exactly what was going on at that time. This is not the time when we were seeing the BBC and one of the clip which was getting into it. The knowledge had to become. And he wanted to understand exactly why the entire Western world was going after this one. Although he had nothing to, Indians had nothing to do with it. And he had, and colonial power had contributed Indian troops to fight the World War I and II. As you know, the Sikh regiment were actually quite very much into it. So I think it was more his inquisitiveness in terms of understanding the consciousness, where he was going from. And that's one of the reasons why, because when he fought the fight for the Indians in South Africa, somebody always feel that he didn't fight for me. So that's why if you think about the black Africans, South Africans, they feel that Gandhi actually disappointed them. If he was fighting the fight for the Indians, why did he not fight for Africans as well, or blacks as well? Well, he wasn't representing that community, and that's why even today, if you remember JAXA, there's always similar student bodies. Even today, they get into this misinformation of saying that he actually knew everything on a day one. That's not the case. He evolved himself into what he eventually became. So when he was representing in Africa about the Indian atrocities, because he was representing the Indian community, he himself has admitted many times that had he had the support and understanding beyond the Indian community, he would have actually fought for them. But there was no contact, there was no connection. It was all segregated society during that apartheid, the height. Answer?
The other thought that comes to me is, I think he had 2 or 3 sons. Where are they now? I wonder about them.
Yes, that's right. I think one of them is in the US, I believe it's in New Jersey, and a couple of them are still in
In the US.
One is in the US and one is in the US. Yeah, grandson, you're right.
One son in the US?
Yeah. Grandson.
Grandson is in US.
Grandson.
I think the son, but
No.
no more.
When became a Muslim?
But the
I believe so. Again, don't quote me.
Right.
But that's why it becomes quite an important aspect to understand what the Gandhi's legacy is, or legacy would be, and how we go around doing it. Because in today's world, power is everything. Dialogue is nothing. The courage is in violence. And thinking about that I can resolve something on a dialogue is not, I want to beat them up first and then I will sit down and have a dialogue. So all of those are so anti-Gandhi. Having said that, it's kind of a weird way. If you think about what the South is doing right now, and I think we all are reflecting on current reality, but let's put ourselves outside of it. What America wants to do, or current leadership wants to do without naming names, they want to become self-reliant. They want to take away the dependence on others. And they want to actually control their own destiny. So that means everything which globalization has done, they want to bring it back. I want to become self-reliant on myself. I want a trade balance. I want equal justice. No, you cannot do that. And I want to actually control my own climate, my own stuff. I just don't want to add anything to it. Don't give me your views. So if you think and reflect on differently, Gandhi was actually saying the same thing to India. So India is saying, don't rush into industrialization. We are an agricultural country. Our 78%, those days even 80+% was completely agricultural land. Even today, probably 78+. But the control of the money and GDP is all with the industry, the industrialization. So we had to do that. We had to do that because we had to follow the world. But the self-reliance is what he was asking for. And if we, as a Canadian, become self-reliant and not depend on the US economy, I think we'll do better off. And that's exactly what the self-reliance meant. But it doesn't necessarily mean we cannot cooperate with others in becoming self-reliant. It's just the codependency or a dependency on others should not be there. So we need to actually start to move our understanding of what he was saying, which obviously was for 1920s to 1947 or 48 until he passed away. We need to really move them into the context of today, what he was saying. It is still as important as it is today.
Jennifer, sorry. Jennifer, do you want me to?
Jennifer.
Dr. Merchant, a privilege to work with you at the Ottawa Hospital, and it's been a real joy to learn from Anil more about Gandhi. And so I'm very, very curious and have really enjoyed your talk. And I'm curious if you can reflect on healthcare in general, Gandhi's philosophy and values and teachings. Where is its place in medicine?
Well, I think Gandhi would have been, and even today, he would have been most happy with our healthcare system because he thought that healthcare is not a privilege, it's a necessity. It's almost a human rights. And I think that's what we so firmly believe in our country. At the same time, he believed in a very kind of different way of medicine, because those were the days of it. He believed in self-discipline, and that's how he actually started with fasting rituals. So he used to always actually do that. He said, it cleanses your system. So it was very much in a holistic way. He wanted to actually have his body cleansed, and he professed that with all the people who were there. He also believed in simple living, and also his diet was very minimal, very non-rich, if you were to think about it. And he was vegetarian and remained vegetarian throughout. And so the simple living, simple life, and following discipline was the best for him. But he also believed and knew that so many underprivileged people during the time when obviously he was there, that could not even get a single access to a single point where some loved ones were actually affected. And the reason why the Canadian healthcare system, or many of the other countries' healthcare system, which are social healthcare system, is what he always envisioned. He said, if we have more, we should be able to share it. And that also includes the healthcare. The healthcare should be accessible and available to everybody. And I think that's what we actually talk about at Ottawa Hospital, that we should be treating patients like our loved ones. And he said, always professed that in the same. Thank you.
Dr. Rishon, thank you for sharing your views with us. If there were ever justification for invoking the principle to intervene and protect, I would be the first one to say that Muslims should be put on the top of the list. Having said that, Islam is no longer just Muslims. Islam has within it a group of people which I call Islamists. They don't believe that life is worth living. Their prize, their joy is in martyrdom and receiving the gifts that will be bestowed on them once they get there. This is not common sense. If you had a bunch of lunatics running around in your hospital, do you do something to contain them? Or do you just use these views that we should show compassion towards these people and eventually they might rise to the point where they become loving human beings? There is a sort of an ideology now that is truly toxic. And yet, you're speaking here to the converted. Everyone here believes what you are saying, but you're not speaking to the people who have just gone crazy. And they are not going to change. What are you going to do about it? I'm sure if Gandhi was present, he will have to rethink his philosophy. Would you agree?
Well, I think it's an interesting reflection. I would not go to the extent of labeling the entire community as a fanatics. And I think you did clarify that Islam is part of Islam. It's not the religion which actually drives them. is how they interpret what it is. But let me actually go back by answering you, and that's why I've given you that couple of examples. We did have those religious challenges, and we ought to also think in terms of reflection of just not Islam and Christianity or Islam and Hinduism, Islam or Jewish. You have to go back to 200, 300, 400, 500 years ago as well, when the Christianity was trying to spread its own mark to the rest of the world, when the colonization was actually going down. Should they have actually killed all those merchants who were going and converting natives and making them Christians or Catholics in generality? And that violence would have actually killed the world at that point in time, but they managed to convert them. And many of the now religious groups who are converted into Catholicism are actually belong to some other pagan kind of religious nation. So it is difficult to pin down to a philosophy where our actions have converted them to look towards fanatism. And that's why I brought up the whole idea of 9/11. That had there been a different response from the educated world, I think the world would have been different. Because you and I just cannot profess that right now because it never happened. But in abstract thinking, it's how Gandhi thought of it. Even though the Indians were persecuted throughout 280, 290 years of colonization, and there was resistance, he still maintained that only way to go forward is non-violence. We will lose many lives, but we will eventually conquer and win over. There are pockets of the people within the religions, the one which you identified, where we need to have those dialogues. We need to actually raise this consciousness among them. There are few fanatics exist everywhere, within every religious fold. I'm pretty sure in Hinduism as well, there are fanatics who are sitting in there who would like to kill as many other non-religious people. But I don't think it would be fair to say that Gandhi would have had a different point of view had he been actually living today. I think he would have had the same thing. He would have had a different way of handling it. So going back to Jennifer, the question about this, if somebody who is actually running around fanatic, the law will take care of that, not Gandhi. Law will have to take care of that. You have somebody who is actually attacking somebody on a religious person, then we have the rules and governance which will actually has to take care of it. It's not the political leader who has to actually come into the fold to say, I'm going to control this one. So, big complex questions, very difficult to answer in one session, but it needs to be dissected in many ways before we can actually address that. Go ahead.
You want me to respond to this?
Sure, why not?
Well, let's take the figures, the facts. There are. Let's take a look at the figures. There are 350,000 Baha'is in Iran that were killed. They believe in universal religions. They're very peaceful people, much like the Jains, but they were killed. There are 600,000 Syrians, children, mothers, parents who were innocent. They are killed. 300,000 in Yemen, 250,000 in Sudan. There is real genocide happening in these countries and real famine happening in these countries. And yet, every time you turn to the radio, 60,000 people have been killed in Gaza. Now let me ask you this. These are Muslims killing Muslims in these countries.
Correct.
And it is the same thing happening in Gaza. Muslims killing Gazans. Just after the ceasefire, hundreds, scores of Gazans have been killed. Now, why is it that the world is turning against the Jews only? I would like to understand this.
I don't think the world is turning against the Jews. I think that the idea about the equivalency of your response, if you are powerful, that's the question. It's not the we. If Sudan is having the genocide, the Houthis are killing their own sort of counterparts, and then Africa is having lots of us killing each other, these are all political wars between the tribes from each other. It's a lot less about the religious killing with religious. There has been a lot of religious killing, no question. That's how the history is all actually been writing about. The idea is, if I am powerful and I'm punishing somebody who is not as powerful, then that equivalency is gone, that moral equivalency is gone, and that's what it is reflecting on. If I am a powerful position and I choose to do what I want to do, nobody is going to object to it. That's why the world was just sitting quiet. We went ahead, nobody objected to it, that the US or Western forces went to Iraq when they never had the weapons of mass destruction. And none of those 9/11 people were actually Iraqis at all. But we killed more than 385,000 people in that war and destroyed everything which Iraq was holding for. But you are not talking about them now. You're only talking about the current crisis it is. So what I'm saying is, if we go from crisis to crisis, we'll never solve the issue. We need to learn from this crisis. And if this crisis actually taught us something, that you are never going to actually resolve this conflict because of what you actually subdued somebody. You only have resolved it for today or time. It's going to come back again. In 10 years, 15, 20 years, I don't know. I may not be able to allow to actually look to that one. So, I know if I've offended your sort of sentiment because I'm actually making reference to it, my apologies for you, but it was not meant to be. It was meant to suggest that if you are a powerful person, moral equivalency actually should dictate your principle, not your strength, and strength from somebody else. That's what I was saying.
Thank you.
How would you like to comment on the fact of Gandhi, who was nominated 3 times for Peace Prize, and what is going on with the philosophy of peace now?
Well, again, the world was different when Gandhi was nominated. The world is different now with how the peace process and the peace awards are actually given. You have to always understand that whenever the awards are given, it's the context of the world where you represent. The idea about Gandhi at that time, he may be the father of one nation, but he may not have been as revered by others, and that it does not become a common sort of goal of fixing up. So he clearly had an amazing impact and imprint on how industrial was. But it necessarily does not necessarily goes along with everybody else's. And so that's what the challenge is. In fact, let me take it back to our Gandhi statue itself. Because one of the objections of the Gandhi statue was that he may be revered by Indians, but he will be hated by somebody else. So that's why we cannot have him in a public place, because it will be always a constant source of friction between the communities out in the public. And that was one of the reasons why the Ottawa civic body decided not to actually bring with the public space, and it went to the academic institution. So, it's very difficult for me to say what was the mindset at the time when he was nominated and what the guiding principle of giving those kind of awards. Oh, sorry, Sam.
Thank you so much, Dr. Merchant, for bringing many, many points about Gandhi. Especially, we live in Canada, and I want to see how relevant he would be here. And I really like your approach that he has so many good qualities, but courage, fearlessness, and these and empathy, they were the greatest quality. And I think we need to apply this in our own case here. For example, we don't complain. We don't vote. As Indo-Canadians, I would say. Why don't we do that? We, for example, we have bullying in schools. We have discrimination. It's not as much as before, but there is. There's so many examples. But we don't complain. And in voting, we just don't bother. Because, because the thing is that most of the first generation Indo-Canadians are doing very well. So it's not in their backyard. It's not happening to them. So they don't really care. I don't. So, and if we all our first generation, second generation, they're doing very well. Economically, they're doing very well. But just imagine if we keep saying Hindus are rich, what will it do? It will create a lot of animosity because we don't get involved in the community. You mentioned about service, seva. We just don't get involved. I'm not saying, large majority of them, they don't. I'm being very honest. So I think we need to be like, use Gandhi's principle of non-violence, truth, fearlessness, and complaint, and get to go and see our member party.
Thank you. Agreed. Participation is the most important, and you need to get involved, whatever actually. Go ahead. Sam.
Participation is important, but we also need structures. And did Gandhi mention anything about the form of governments?
His form of government was, as he truly believed in democracy and having everyone involved. He believed in equal rights. He also believed in minority and protecting minority, because he saw that for ages the minority was they were clearly suppressed in India and continued through the colonial time. And so majority of his efforts at the tail end of, I'll tell you about 1942 on, when it was quite apparent that India was to get independence. It wasn't 100% sure. And in 42, Leave India movement was started. It became quite clear. He got more focused on equality and justice and giving rights to the minority and then governance. He actually pulled away himself from Indian People Congress because I can see that he elect the Nehrus and Sardar Patel, those were the days to handle that. And in some ways, by 1946 and 47, he actually got a little bit separated from the mainstream politics because his views were then considered more radical. He wanted to actually give a lot more to the Islamic majority or minority they had, because he felt that they were not treated well throughout the Indian sort of independence. And when what Zia was asking, in his opinion, was reasonable that he should really make him the prime minister to appease the Muslim, while the Hindus would not have agreed with that. So there was a lot of fracturing was happening at that time, and he very strongly believed that the only way to do that is to lift the minorities and give equal footing to all of them. And the only way to do that is to create a system so that they are well protected. And many of the people who were in the governance part of it, they could not see or did not see that. They thought that yes, the social structure was important. That's why, if you recall, India post-independence was socialistic in its lean, and they leaned towards that we need to get equal to all. But that because we were agricultural, we didn't have an industrial base, so it was very easy to do so. And that's how our forefathers in terms of the political reality actually went. But his overwhelming support for minority and the people who were suppressed actually created an incredible amount of clearly animosity in the system, and that's for that reason he gave his life to a very Hindu who actually had reared him. Believed that he has given up too much for the Hindu nation because they thought they were fighting for Hindu nation. So, from the political governance point of view, he felt that everybody should be involved, like the way what Sam was saying just now, that we all should be participating in governance structure, democracy, and the dialogue is the only way to actually run the country. I think that's what his overwhelming idea is.
Thank you, Pradeep, for the excellent presentation. Sitting here and listening to a message from Gandhi, non-violence, peace, and truth, all of it very relevant from Adam. Gandhi didn't invent it, but he put it forward. But sitting here and I'm thinking maybe in this room there are 200 people learn all about Gandhi's morality. But what about this message to people who really, really need it? They hold power. They have the reins of power in this world, and in their and the action can do a lot of harm to humans. So how do we reach them to follow these principles and decrease violence in this world?
I think that's a disconnect we see between what he preached and what is being actually practiced. Now I like to actually reflect on saying I think we need to introspect ourselves. As I said, he meant by saying we need to change ourselves rather than asking for somebody else to change. The people, when they get into power, they forget about those things. That they've been elected by the people, for the people, and to do the good for the people. Instead, they become more of policy wonks, and they just want to do what exactly they believe they've been actually elected for, rather than actually representing the people. So I know what you're saying is correct. I think something like this has to go above the conversation level and start to actually impress on the people who have a position of power or a position of decision making and a position where they can actually create those changes. And I think we need to do that, but that's how, and I think just to answer your question, that's how we actually let our decision making go away from our hand into the hands of few elected men, but that's the only system we have. And nobody, I'm the first one to say democracy is not a perfect governance solution. It has its own pitfall. But out of all what we have, this is probably the best one where we are getting an opportunity to every 4 or 5 years, whatever your election cycle is, to elect a representative to actually send them. So what Sam was saying is get involved. Make sure you elect a representative who's actually understand or at least hearing the principle they're supposed to represent you when they go up on the ladder. And so I think that's where that's how the system is right now. It's not going to be that somebody gets an audience with a prime minister of a country and things are actually dramatically going to change. It's going to have to be changed ground up. It took years, hundreds of years before it happened previously. It probably is going to take a similar amount of generations to change before their thinking and ideology is going to change. Thank you for asking.
I'd just like to have your thoughts on that. Do you think that it would be a prerequisite that one must have a complete and impeccable moral authority embedded in the universal virtues and selflessness at its core to follow Gandhi?
I think in some parts all of those virtues are required. I don't think to the level which I think you are just reading, but there is, without moral authority, you cannot guide anybody. You need to, without ethics, you cannot direct anybody. And without courage, you cannot stand in front of the injustice. So all of those attributes are required for a leader. But that's not what is happening today. The leadership has become a popularity context, and it's become ideological. That if I believe in something in the people, if I can actually get onto a podium and convince 100 people and 100 people can vote for me, I'm going to be elected. Whether I believe in it or it's not the issue here. So I think it's John F. Kennedy who changed the entire stuff. When he was on a TV and people liked him, people just say, I like this man to be president. Before that, it never used to be televised and nobody used to see as much value in the televised debate. But suddenly the debate became an important thing rather than a substance of the debate. Although those days substance were there. Now it is all about the charisma on the TV. Are you a 6-footer male, white guy to actually win a presidency in some countries?
it's all about personality, then character in that personality. It's all about how you present yourself rather than all about the cult and the following rather than a principle and the following. So what you are saying is correct. To find such character is going to be hard in this day and age. So even if you like somebody who is doing some good work in one country, he may be a villain for the other country because he'll be caricatured and he'll be memed through the social media, and you'll see all kinds of things. And there's always a two sides of the story, like this gentleman is reflecting on what my point was about the Gaza. But that he's not wrong, neither am I. We should hold the views of the same thing, because I believe in moral equivalency or response in equivalency, while somebody else does not, because they say they were barbaric and they did that. Do I consider him wrong? No, I think he has a right for his own self views, and I should be able to listen to him respectfully, and I have. And then so hopefully he has listened to my views respectfully, that I'm not holding against Jews. In fact, India, if I take in the context of it, is the biggest supporter of Israel as a nation. But the idea is not about this. The idea is about moral equivalency. If Pakistan attacks and we get 28 people killed in Pahalgam, India actually then throw a nuclear strike to Pakistan without actually anything, that would have created immoral equivalency. Instead, they go for precision strikes and want to actually do this and want to actually just kill their terrorist bases. And I'm just, I don't want to make this as a political conversation, but what I'm trying to say is there is an equivalency, and there has to be a courage in standing up to that kind of a barbarism, but with the restraint of a strong person. Because if you don't show restraint, then you are equally becoming the same way, because you're just saying tit for tat is good. Blind, killing another blind is also, one eye to other eye. The whole world is going to be blind, and I think somehow or the other we've gone into that kind of a phase now.
Any other questions? If not, I'll invite Punita to give a vote of thanks. Punita?
Thank you, folks.
Good afternoon, friends. At the close of the inspiring session, I want to express my gratitude to all who made this event meaningful and memorable. First and foremost, our sincere thank you to Dr. Pradeep Merchant for his deeply thoughtful and engaging presentation. You have reminded us that Gandhi's message of truth, nonviolence, and compassion is not a lesson from history. It is a guide for how we live today. Your reflections have touched our minds and hearts, helping us see how Gandhi's vision can still illuminate our path in these uncertain times. I'm also thankful to our board members of the Mahatma Gandhi Peace Council of Ottawa and to our life members, trustees, sponsors, and patrons for their steadfast support. Your guidance, energy, and commitment keep this organization strong and relevant. To our annual members and volunteers, thank you for your ongoing efforts, organizing, reaching out, setting up, and welcoming everyone with warmth. Every event is a success because of you all. We also thank all our attendees and friends from the community. Your presence adds life and purpose to our work. We hope today's session has given you something to reflect on and carry forward in your own lives. A special word of appreciation to the Minto Recreation Complex staff for their assistance, and to those behind the scenes handling logistics, sound, refreshment, to aunties. Thank you for your quiet but essential contribution. Before we part, I invite everyone to stay connected with us. Visit our website gandhiji.ca to explore our newsletters, upcoming talks, and community dialogues. And if you believe in our mission, please consider becoming a member or supporter of the Gandhi Peace Council. Your involvement will help keep Gandhi's values alive in our community and community at large. Once again, thank you all for joining us today. May we continue to be guided by truth, peace, compassion in our thoughts and actions. Have a wonderful evening, and we look forward to seeing you at our next event, Simplicity is a Material World, the Joy of Non-Possession, Aparigraha, by Mr. Kameshwar Mishra on Saturday, the 8th of November at 3 p.m. in the same place. Thank you once again, and thank you for the
Thank you. What's the name?